They say the devil's in the details, and I used to think that was just something people said to justify obsessing over minutiae. But I know better now. It started on an unremarkable Thursday morning, the kind where everything feels slightly off without any single thing you can point to. The kind where the coffee tastes a little burnt, the shower runs lukewarm instead of hot, and your shirt has that faint smell of detergent that never fully rinsed out. A normal day on the outside, but inside, something was humming, low, insistent, like a warning you don't understand until it's far too late. I came downstairs, ready for work, adjusting my tie with one hand and juggling my travel mug in the other. Vanessa stood at the kitchen island, hair in a loose twist, wearing that soft beige sweater I bought her for our anniversary the year before. It clung gently to her shoulders, and for a moment, I forgot everything else, the noise, the coffee, the uneasy feeling. That is, until she turned to hand me my phone and I noticed it. A bracelet. Thin, silver, not quite flashy, but not subtle either. 3 tiny charms dangled from it. A heart, a star, and a smooth oval plate etched with what looked like initials. It gleamed against her wrist as she moved. I frowned. That new. She smiled, brushing her thumb over the plate like it held some sentimental weight. You gave it to me last month. Remember? That little boutique in Savannah? Savannah. I blinked at her, the room going oddly quiet even as the kettle clicked off in the background. I've never been to Savannah, I said carefully. Vanessa let out a soft laugh. Yes, you have. When we went for Rachel's wedding last spring. I opened my mouth, closed it again. Rachel's wedding had been canceled, spectacularly, 2 weeks before the date. Her fiancé ran off with a yoga instructor and posted about it on Instagram. I remember because Vanessa and I sat on the porch that evening, wine glasses in hand, reading the comment section aloud like it was Shakespeare. That had been the same week we argued about refinancing the mortgage. No wedding, no trip, no boutique, and definitely no bracelet. I didn't argue, though. I simply nodded and sipped my coffee, watching her for any sign that this was a joke, a tease, some new game I wasn't yet aware of. But there was nothing. Just that easy smile and the graceful turn of her wrist as she tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. It wasn't mine. I would have remembered picking that out. The charms alone weren't her style. She preferred clean lines, minimalist pieces. Not this sentimental trinket. Vanessa didn't wear things with meaning unless they meant something. And certainly not something with initials. I couldn't see them clearly, but they definitely weren't mine. I left for work shortly after. The office felt distant, my team's voices dulled, like I was underwater. I barely remember the meetings. My mind kept drifting back to that bracelet. The way she looked at it. Like it mattered. That night, I checked her jewelry box while she showered. It was there, right in the middle tray, nestled between the gold locket from her grandmother and the pearl earrings I gave her when Sonia was born. The bracelet lay in perfect symmetry, the charms neatly aligned, the chain coiled with care. I picked it up. The plate was engraved with D+V. My name's Eric. I held the bracelet between 2 fingers like it might burn me. D? Who the hell was D? I put it back exactly as I'd found it. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Vanessa curled beside me, breath slow and even. I lay staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself there was some explanation I hadn't thought of. Maybe it was from a friend. Maybe she meant a different trip. Maybe I was misremembering. But I don't forget things. That's my whole job. Precision, detail, timelines. I'm an architect, and nothing gets built on shaky memory. The foundation matters. Friday, I went through her phone while she was in the shower. She kept it locked, but I'd watched her enter the passcode 100 times. The digits were the kids' birth dates, alternating day and month. Easy. Her texts were clean. Almost too clean. Barely any history before last week, and even that was just mundane stuff. Groceries, a text from her sister about a baby shower, some messages from me. But her deleted messages folder was empty, which struck me as odd. Vanessa always had at least a few drafts, half-written responses. Now, nothing. Sterile. Sanitized. I moved to her emails. Same story. I felt like I was staring at a freshly swept crime scene. She emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, smiling at me like nothing was wrong. I closed her phone, placed it on the nightstand, and smiled back. Checking your messages? She asked. Just trying to remember what time your parents are coming Sunday. I lied. She nodded, dropping the towel and slipping into her robe. I kissed her shoulder as she passed. acting as though I wasn't already unraveling inside. The next few days, I watched her, studied her. Everything she did was normal, too normal. The kids noticed nothing. Vanessa laughed at the same sitcoms, made her coffee the same way, even teased me about forgetting to fold the laundry again. But every time her wrist flashed silver, my stomach turned. D+V. I started staying late at work, telling her I had a big project due. I didn't. I sat in my car outside the house, listening to old voicemails, trying to hear if her voice had changed, and I just hadn't noticed. I checked our shared credit card account, our phone records, everything I could access without her knowing. The name came up on a florist bill from 2 months ago, Derek's Floral Company. We hadn't bought flowers in months. I dug deeper, eventually tracing the charge to a delivery at her office, mid-April. A Tuesday. Vanessa said she had a migraine that day. I remembered because I picked up the kids from daycare and made dinner, while she stayed in bed with the lights off. A migraine that came with a bouquet. I didn't say anything yet. I couldn't. I needed more. So I hired a private investigator. Her name was Marcy, ex-cop, discreet, efficient. We met in a coffee shop near the train station. I gave her Vanessa's schedule, work address, gym details. She nodded, took notes, never asked why. People like her don't need the why. They just get the truth. And me? I sat in my car every night, watching that silver glint on her wrist as she waved goodbye before heading to her evening yoga class. Always smiling. Always the same woman I'd married. Except now, I wasn't so sure. The bracelet wasn't mine, and the initials didn't belong to me. By the following Thursday, I had stopped pretending to be surprised by my own thoughts. The suspicions weren't passing fancies anymore. They had turned into routines. Part of my day, like brushing my teeth or double-checking the front door lock. They lived in me now, breathing with me, eating with me, sleeping beside me. Or rather, not sleeping. I lay awake while Vanessa slept, staring at the shadows cast by the streetlight seeping through our blinds. Her wrist, always draped over the comforter, flashed with that silver bracelet each time she shifted. It felt like an accusation. D+V. I repeated those letters like a prayer or a curse, trying to imagine what Derek looked like. Derek. It had to be him. The name on the florist bill. I didn't know a Derek. Neither did she. Or at least, not one she'd ever mentioned. Marcy, the private investigator, sent her first report that evening. I'd barely touched my dinner when the email landed. Vanessa had taken an extended lunch Tuesday. She left her office at 12:11 p.m., entered a black Audi at the curb, and wasn't seen again until 2:37 when she returned to work, hair slightly tousled, her blouse buttoned wrong. The Audi belonged to a Derek Langford. Langford. I repeated the name in my head as I read more. Divorced. Works in real estate. A man who, according to Marcy's brief but sharp summary, has a pattern. I scrolled down. There it was, a photo, snapped from across the street. My wife, sitting in the passenger seat, laughing. Her fingers tucked behind her ear. The bracelet catching the sun. You ever feel your heart physically shift in your chest? That was the moment it happened to me. Not break. Not crack. Shift. Like it recognized its new position in my body. Off-center. Wrong. I clicked through the rest of the photos. There were only 3. Marcy promised more soon, but these were enough. Too much. And somehow still not enough. I needed more than proof of a meeting. I needed the story. The beginning. The build-up. The betrayal. I needed to know if he made her feel more alive than I did. If she laughed more in those 2 hours than she had in 2 years with me. That night, I went back to her jewelry box. I stared at the bracelet again, turning it over, tracing the letters with my thumb. Vanessa shifted in bed behind me, murmuring something in her sleep. I froze, holding my breath. She didn't wake. The next morning, I told her I had to travel to Chicago for a last-minute site visit. She blinked in sleepy confusion, but nodded. Take a jacket, she said. I packed light and drove 3 towns over to a small motel. Cheap, clean, anonymous. Marcy said she'd be tailing Vanessa that afternoon. I waited, pacing the room, scrolling mindlessly through news articles I didn't read, fingers twitching every time my phone buzzed. At 4:22 p.m., a message came through. Vanessa entered the Quill Cafe at 3:40 p.m. Langford joined her at 3:45. Still there. I didn't respond. She didn't text me once. Not even a, how's the trip? Around 5 o'clock, another ping. They left together. His car. Heading west. And at 5:48. Parked outside Langford's townhouse. Lights off. Curtains drawn. Car still outside. I imagined the bracelet, unhooked and resting on a nightstand that wasn't ours. I stayed in that motel room overnight, not because I had to, but because I couldn't stand to see her. I needed to look at her without giving everything away. My face was full of splinters by then, shards of fury, confusion, humiliation. In the morning, I returned home just before she woke. I made coffee, like I always did. Sat at the kitchen island. She walked in, tying her robe, stretching, yawning. "You're back already?" she said, surprised. I smiled. Flight was early. She came over and kissed my cheek. "Glad you're home," she murmured. Then she reached for her mug, and I saw it. The bracelet, still on her wrist. I could have screamed. Instead, I sipped my coffee and nodded. Me too. That Saturday, I told her I was going to the hardware store, but instead I met Marcy again. We sat in her car near a library parking lot. She handed me a small envelope. Photos, notes, timestamps, everything. The last photo was taken just hours ago. Vanessa exiting Langford's place, wearing the same outfit from the night before. She never came home? I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Nope," Marcy said, watching me carefully. I stared at the photo until the edges blurred. "Want me to keep going?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "No, I've seen enough." I drove around for hours after that, through neighborhoods we'd never lived in, past parks we never took the kids to. My head was a hornet's nest. Eventually, I returned home. Vanessa was there, folding laundry. She looked up and smiled. "You were gone a while." "Yeah, traffic." She nodded, kept folding. Her wedding ring glinted as she lifted a t-shirt. Her left wrist bare. The bracelet was gone. And just like that, I knew. She wasn't trying to hide it anymore. That evening, I took the kids to my mother's house. Told Vanessa I needed a few days to help out with yard work. She barely looked up from her book. Tell her I said hi. I left her alone in the house we'd built together. The house with every memory carved into its walls. And I didn't look back. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened every photo Marcy had taken. Every text. Every note. I stared at that bracelet again. The one in the photos. The one that wasn't mine. The one that belonged to someone else. Someone who had touched my wife in ways I hadn't, couldn't, wouldn't. And that's when I decided. I wouldn't confront her yet. Not until I had everything I needed. Not until she thought she'd gotten away with it. She believed she was ahead. That the bracelet, the lies, the late lunches and overnight stays, that all of it was invisible. But she didn't know what I knew. She didn't know what was coming. She didn't know how I would burn it all down. I don't know what snapped in me first, the restraint or the fear. All I know is that after 3 weeks of playing detective, of watching my wife slip quietly in and out of another life, I no longer wanted answers. I wanted control. Vanessa had been seeing Derek Langford for at least 2 months. Maybe longer. Marcy's timeline only went back as far as the footage could reach. The pictures, the stakeouts, the quiet confirmations. Everything pointed to something deeper than just infatuation. There were things you couldn't fake in photographs. The way Vanessa leaned into him like she was drawn by gravity, how she smiled without glancing around like she did with me, and the way her hands lingered too long on his chest when they embraced. I'd spent my life designing buildings. I understood structural failure. A hairline fracture in the wrong place could bring down a skyscraper. This was no different. Our marriage wasn't crumbling from a storm. It was splitting from within, and she'd been chiseling away at the foundation for months while I stood dumbly on the porch. I stopped asking, why somewhere between Monday and Thursday. By Friday, I was done asking anything. I was planning. I started with her phone. The clone copy Marcy helped me install updated daily. I tracked her texts, her call logs, her maps history. Derek's name never appeared. Not once. But there were calls to an unsaved number every 2 days, sometimes longer. The conversations lasted 7 minutes on average. Just long enough, I assumed, for the arrangement of their next meeting. I knew the code she used to unlock her real phone, the one she hid in the vent behind the guest bathroom mirror. I only had to watch once more as she slipped it back into the hollow space after a weekend brunch with Rachel. No need to snoop now. I had every message forwarded to my inbox. Everything. She called him D. The first text I ever saw from that phone simply read, "Tell me again what you whispered into my hair that night in June." D replied, "I said you feel like freedom." I stared at that message for 10 minutes. 10 full minutes. I could have been sick, but I wasn't. I was still, dead still, because I realized in that moment, I didn't want to salvage this. I wanted to dismantle it. Slowly, purposefully, brick by painful brick. So I played the part. That weekend, I suggested we take a short family trip to the mountains. The kids could run wild. She and I could reconnect, and I could pretend to be the loving, unsuspecting husband she probably thought she had in her palm. She agreed, smiled, kissed me, and then, after dinner, she slipped into the bathroom, thinking I didn't know about the other phone in her hand. While she texted D, I reviewed my to-do list. Create a shadow email account under her name. Done. Extract screenshots of every explicit text she sent. Done. Retrieve call logs, location data, hotel bookings from her travel points account. Done. Prepare the Dropbox link, titled A Love Story. Done. By the time we left for the trip, I had everything I needed to destroy her reputation in 5 minutes or less. But that wasn't enough. I wanted her to watch it all collapse. The trip itself was uneventful. Scenic drives, hikes through golden woods. Vanessa played the doting wife well. She laughed easily, hugged the kids tight, snapped photos like we were the perfect family. At night, we sat on the deck with wine, pretending to admire the stars. "You've been different lately," she said, swirling her glass. "Oh, calmer. I don't know. Like you've let something go." I smiled at her, slow and tired. "Maybe I have." She leaned over and kissed me. And for the first time, I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not sadness, just absence. Like I was watching someone else's memory play out in front of me. By Monday, I was ready. It began with an envelope. I left it on her nightstand before work. Inside, a single printed photo. Her and Derek, lips inches apart, outside a bookstore. The timestamp visible in the corner. No note. No words. Just the photo. I waited. The call came at 9:13 a.m. "Eric," she said. Her voice was trembling. "What is this?" I didn't say anything. Just let the silence stretch. "Where did you get this?" Still nothing. "Eric," she tried again, softer this time. "Please talk to me. I think you should come home," I said finally. "We need to talk." When I walked in 2 hours later, she was on the couch. Makeup smeared. The bracelet gone. She stood when she saw me. "Eric, it's not what it looks like." I tilted my head. "No. We've only been talking. I mean, we had coffee a few times, that's it. You know how I get when I'm feeling lonely. I've been overwhelmed. I held up my hand. "I know everything, Vanessa." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone. Tapped a few times. Every text. Every call. Every location. "You used your real name at the boutique hotel on 14th Street, by the way. Amateur mistake." Her mouth opened. Closed. "I didn't. I thought." "You thought I was stupid," I said. "That's what all of this comes down to." "No, Eric, I didn't." "Save it," I snapped. "You've spent 2 months treating our life like a backdrop for your little fantasy with Derek Langford. You paraded that bracelet like a prize, then had the audacity to say it was from me. You looked me in the eyes and lied. Every day?" She was crying now. "I didn't mean to fall for him. I swear. It just happened." "Love doesn't just happen when you're married with kids," I said coldly. "It's a choice. And you made yours." She covered her face, sobbing. "I'm not divorcing you yet," I said after a pause. "But we're done. Emotionally, romantically, publicly, we're still a team. For now, until I decide otherwise." She looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" I walked to the counter, picked up the second envelope. Inside were the screenshots. A printout of the hotel receipt. A photo of her texting with the caption, "Tell me again what you whispered into my hair." I slid it onto the table. "This is the package I've prepared for your parents. For your friends. For our kids' school board. And if you so much as breathe the wrong way, I'll send it. All of it." Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't. Try me." The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was roaring. Thick. Suffocating. Vanessa crumpled onto the couch. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Because the bracelet wasn't mine," I said without looking back. "And I don't believe in forgiveness for things that never should have happened." I walked out, leaving her in the ruins of her deception. But this was only the first crack in her world. The real demolition hadn't even started. I didn't go back that night. Instead, I checked into a hotel across town, one with a view of the skyline and thick blackout curtains. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat in the armchair by the window, watching the city blink and breathe beneath me, waiting for the sun to rise and wondering how much of my former life would survive the week. Vanessa didn't call. Not once. By morning, she'd realized I wasn't bluffing. She didn't know it yet, but I was already reworking the architecture of her life, and not with a sledgehammer, but with a scalpel. The real revenge began in the margins. Quietly. Precisely. I started with the boutique hotel she used for her weekday rendezvous, the one that offered corporate discounts to regulars. A well-placed call to the manager, under the guise of concerns about security breaches, got me confirmation that Derek Langford had, in fact, used a company credit card for one of the nights. His employer? A high-end development firm with a sparkling public image. I bookmarked their press release page. Next, I reached out to my old friend Tyler, a web developer who owed me a favor. I sent him a folder titled Bracelet. Inside, 23 images, 15 audio clips, and a neatly organized PDF of Vanessa's most explicit text threads, redacted for names, but not enough to keep her from being easily recognized by anyone who knew her voice, her wrist, her walk. Tyler didn't ask questions. He just said, "You want this to go public?" "Not yet," I replied, "but I want it ready. Clean. Elegant. Like a gallery." He whistled softly. "You really want to torch the ground, huh?" "No," I said. "I want to salt it." The website was live in less than 48 hours, password protected, unsearchable by Google, a ghost in the machine. But once the password was shared, there'd be no pulling it back. A controlled detonation. I waited. At home, Vanessa went about her routine like a shadow. I returned late each night and left early, saying nothing beyond what was necessary for the kids. She tried small talk once, something about James needing new cleats, but I ignored her. She didn't try again. I could feel her spiraling. Her smiles felt forced, laughter absent. And the bracelet, once proudly displayed, had disappeared entirely. She didn't wear it anymore. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe fear. Maybe she'd finally recognized it for what it was, evidence. But removing it didn't erase the damage. I kept track of Derek, too. Marcy fed me updates daily, his work hours, gym visits, even a coffee date with a woman who wasn't Vanessa. Typical. He was reckless now. Comfortable. Which made it easier to gut him. I sent an anonymous email to his firm's ethics board using a burner account. Attached were time-stamped images of Derek and Vanessa entering the boutique hotel on 3 different occasions. The email was short. "This is your senior broker on company time, billing clients. Might want to check your statements." I never saw the fallout, but I didn't have to. The following Tuesday, Marcy reported that Derek's LinkedIn had gone dark. By Thursday, his profile was gone entirely. Job terminated. One match. One spark. And the blueprint burned. Vanessa still didn't know what I was planning. She still believed I might divorce her quietly, disappear with dignity, and let her tell the story the way she wanted. We just grew apart. Or he changed. But I hadn't changed. I'd evolved. The next strike was more personal. Vanessa was on the committee for a local nonprofit, a women's mentoring group she helped run with 3 of her closest friends. They met weekly in our home office. I knew that because I installed a camera there the same day she claimed it was her safe space. Marcy helped me compile 2 months' worth of footage. Nothing illegal. Nothing lewd. Just a quiet, damning compilation of Vanessa canceling meetings for emergencies while simultaneously checking into hotels with Derek. I didn't even have to release it. I just made sure a single USB drive found its way into the purse of her co-chair, Allison, during a fundraiser. By the end of that week, Vanessa received an email stating she was being relieved of committee duties pending an internal review. She cried that night, in the laundry room, with the door closed. I didn't go to her. I sat in the living room with a beer and the television muted, letting the silence grow heavy between us. And still, she didn't apologize. Not once. No confession. No explanation. Just silence. The final piece? That was the gallery. Tyler had finished it. The site was beautiful. Stark black background, grayscale imagery, red type. A cinematic experience of betrayal. Titled, "The Bracelet That Wasn't Mine." I created a custom password for Vanessa's email address. Then I waited for the right moment. It came on a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks after the first photo hit her nightstand. She came home from picking up Sonia and found a single envelope in the mailbox. Inside, A card with a single line written in block font. If the bracelet was from me, what else was a lie? No name, no signature, just that line, and a web address with a password. I watched from my office window as she opened it, read the card, then stared at the screen on her phone for a long time. When she entered the site, I knew. I could see her reflection in the window, her posture, the phone trembling in her hand. She walked inside slowly, like every step took effort. She didn't say a word that night. She didn't say a word the next day either. She just existed, raw, undone, cornered. The power dynamic had flipped completely, and she knew it. She didn't ask who else had seen the site, didn't ask how I got the texts or the photos. She didn't dare, because she knew whatever version of me existed before was gone. What was left was a man who no longer feared the collapse. I had already started building a new foundation, one where she didn't get to keep the narrative, one where the story wasn't about a marriage breaking, but about who broke it. I tucked the original bracelet into a small velvet pouch and left it in her makeup drawer. Inside the pouch was a note. I wanted you to have it back. You'll need it when you testify. That night, she knocked on my office door, eyes rimmed red, mouth tight. Eric, she said. I looked up, but before she could speak, I interrupted. I'm not ready to listen yet. She blinked. Please. Not yet, I repeated, because the best revenge wasn't public. It was letting her live every day in the ruins. I used to think revenge would feel like fireworks, loud, bright, final. But when it finally came, it felt quiet, surgical, almost peaceful. It had been a month since the bracelet appeared on her wrist, the day everything in my life began to tilt. A month since I started tearing down the false walls of our marriage, brick by brick. Vanessa was still living in the house. We moved through it like ghosts in the same haunting. The kids kept us civil, small conversations about school lunches and playdates, nothing more. But between us, something dangerous lingered. A silence that hummed like a live wire. I knew she was afraid of what I'd do next. And part of me liked that. Not because I wanted her destroyed, but because I wanted her aware. Aware of the weight of every lie she'd built her little world on. The website, the bracelet that wasn't mine, was still active, still password protected. I hadn't shared it publicly. Not yet. Tyler had even texted to ask, "You sure you don't want it to go viral?" It's airtight. No, I wasn't after spectacle. I wanted precision. I wanted understanding. That Thursday morning, I watched Vanessa make breakfast like she used to, except now every movement was deliberate. She poured orange juice without meeting my eyes, sliced strawberries for Sonia, smiled faintly at James's chatter. She still wore her wedding ring. Not out of love, I think, but guilt. A small confession she kept visible. When the kids left for school, she stayed behind, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. The faint tremor in her hands told me she'd been rehearsing this moment. Eric, she said quietly, I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need to explain something before you decide what happens next. Her voice was thin, stripped of the confidence that used to define her. I didn't interrupt. I just waited. She exhaled. Derek wasn't supposed to be anything. It started at a conference in March. He was charming, attentive. I felt seen again, for the first time in years. And I know that sounds selfish. I know it's not an excuse. But when he gave me that bracelet, her throat tightened. I wanted to believe someone still looked at me the way you used to. I said nothing. The air between us was heavy with the smell of coffee and something sour, like regret. I ended it, she said suddenly. After you confronted me, I told him never to contact me again. I met her eyes for the first time in weeks. You think that matters? Tears welled. No. But I want you to know I'm not running anymore. Whatever happens, I'll accept it. I studied her face. For the first time, there was no defiance. No defense. Just ruin. And oddly, that ruin made her look more human than she had in months. You don't get to choose what happens, I said finally. You lost that privilege the moment you lied about where that bracelet came from. She nodded slowly, like she'd already expected that. Then she stood, crossed the kitchen, and placed something on the table in front of me. It was the bracelet. The chain had snapped. One of the charms, the heart, was missing. The plate still read D+V, though the letters were dulled from wear. I don't want it, she whispered. I can't even look at it without hating myself. I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. Cold metal, heavy for its size. I'd imagined this thing 100 times, snapping it in half, melting it down, throwing it into the river. But now that it was real and broken and sitting in my palm, it felt like nothing more than an object, a relic from a life that didn't exist anymore. That night, after the kids went to bed, I opened my laptop and logged into the site. My finger hovered over the key that would make it public. Tyler had built a one-button publish link. Once clicked, every image, every message, every timestamp would scatter across the web like ash in the wind. It would ruin her completely. And yet, I didn't click, because I realized I wasn't angry anymore. What I felt now wasn't vengeance. It was clarity. Cold, clean, absolute. I had already destroyed what needed to be destroyed. The facade. The illusion. She was living in the ruins of her own making, and I had no desire to add fire to the rubble. I shut the laptop and went to the garage. In a small metal bin, I dropped the bracelet and lit a match. The silver chain curled and blackened in seconds, the charms melting into formless beads. The initials vanished first. By morning, there was nothing left but a thin layer of ash. Vanessa didn't ask where I'd gone when I came back inside. She was sitting on the couch with her hands folded, eyes red but dry. The sunlight through the curtains made her look translucent, like she could disappear if I blinked. "I'm filing for divorce," I said simply. She nodded. "I know. I won't go public with any of it," I added. "But I've kept copies. If you ever lie again, to me, to the kids, to anyone, those copies will find daylight." Her lip trembled. "Understood." We sat there in silence for a while. The hum of the refrigerator filled the air, steady and indifferent. I should have felt relief. Maybe I did, somewhere deep down. But mostly, I felt empty. Because that's the thing about revenge. It gives you closure, but never peace. Over the next few weeks, we split the logistics of our life like assets. The house to be sold, custody shared, accounts divided. Everything labeled, itemized, reduced to signatures and envelopes. A sterile ending to what had once been a heartbeat. When the papers were signed, she lingered at the doorway. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the wind. "Eric, if you ever wondered, yes, I loved you. I just forgot how to show it." I didn't answer. Some truths are too late to matter. After she left, I walked upstairs to what used to be our bedroom. The jewelry box still sat on her dresser, a hollow reminder. I opened it. Inside, where the bracelet once lay, there was a folded slip of paper. In faint handwriting, "I wish it had been from you." I closed the box. That night, I slept for the first time in months. No dreams. No replaying of images. No echo of betrayal. Just stillness. Weeks later, Tyler texted, "You ever want that site erased?" I stared at the message before replying. "No. Keep it hidden. Every structure needs a foundation, even the ones we've buried." Because in the end, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about remembering what happens when you stop paying attention to the smallest details, the ones that reveal everything. A bracelet, a lie, a silence that said too much, and the man who finally saw the truth shining right there on her wrist.